Harbor Freight just released 7 new tools for 2026, and this video runs through them in a simple countdown so you can see which ones are actually worth paying attention to. I've already spent time reviewing these tools, looking at how they're built, what they're meant to be used for, and where they make sense, and where they don't. The last tool on this list is one that quietly saves people the most money once they actually start using it. Let's get started. 7. 5-outlet power hub. This one sounds simple at first, but it solves a problem almost every garage or workspace runs into sooner or later: not enough usable outlets in the right place. The 5-outlet power hub is designed to sit out in the open instead of hiding behind a bench or getting buried under cords. By stacking the outlets vertically and facing them in different directions, it lets you plug in multiple tools at once without fighting bulky plugs or power bricks. That alone makes it easier to keep a workspace functional instead of constantly unplugging one thing to use another. Where this really starts to matter is in real-world setups. Think about a typical garage session: a battery charger running, a work light on, maybe a fan, plus a grinder or small power tool. With a regular power strip, cords overlap, plugs block each other, and everything ends up stretched across the floor. This hub pulls all of that into one central point, which immediately makes the space feel cleaner and easier to work in. The built-in USB ports add another layer of convenience. Phones, inspection lights, meters, and rechargeable accessories can all charge without burning a full outlet or needing extra adapters. It's not a flashy feature, but once you have it, it quietly saves time every single day. The main thing to keep in mind is that this isn't about adding power, it's about managing it. You still need to be mindful of total load if you're running multiple high-draw tools at the same time. Used correctly, though, it's a simple upgrade that makes a workspace more efficient and less frustrating. That's why it lands at number 7. It's not exciting, but it's genuinely useful, and it improves everything around it. Coming up at number 6 is a tool that matters a lot more if you work on modern vehicles or handle your own tire changes. 6. Icon TPMS Toolkit. If you work on modern vehicles, tire pressure monitoring systems are one of those things you can't ignore, even if you want to. Years ago, TPMS lights were mostly an annoyance. Now they're tied into safety systems, inspections, and onboard diagnostics. Once that light comes on, it doesn't go away on its own, and guessing doesn't help. The Icon TPMS tool exists for one reason: to take the mystery out of tire sensor issues. It's built to activate sensors, trigger relearn procedures, and help identify which sensor is failing or not responding. That sounds simple, but without a dedicated tool, those steps usually mean a shop visit, even for something minor. Where this tool really starts to make sense is when you look at common scenarios. Rotate your tires. Some vehicles need a relearn. Replace one bad sensor, relearn. Swap to winter wheels, relearn again. Each of those trips costs time and often money, even though the actual process only takes a few minutes. With the right equipment, this tool puts that control back in your hands. Another important point is reliability. A lot of cheaper TPMS tools technically work, but they're slow, inconsistent, or finicky. You end up repeating steps, wondering if the tool or the car is the problem. The Icon version is designed to be predictable. You trigger the sensor, the car responds, and you move to the next wheel. That consistency is why it appeals not just to DIYers, but to small shops and mobile techs who don't have time for trial and error. It also changes how you diagnose problems. Instead of guessing which tire is causing the warning, you can test each sensor directly. That saves you from replacing parts that aren't actually bad, which is where a lot of TPMS frustration comes from. One weak sensor battery can cause the entire system to complain, and without a tool like this, you're often stuck chasing symptoms. This isn't a casual use gadget. If you never touch your own tires, it'll sit unused. But if you do tire work even a few times a year, or you run multiple wheel sets, it quickly becomes one of those tools that justifies itself by eliminating repeat shop visits. That's why it lands at number 6. It's not exciting, and it's not universal, but for the right person, it removes a constant headache and turns a dealership-only task into a 5-minute driveway job. Coming up at number 5 is a cordless tool people have been waiting on for years, and it finally closes a big gap in Harbor Freight's ecosystem. 5. Hercules 20-volt brushless rotary hammer. This tool fills one of the most obvious holes Harbor Freight had in its cordless lineup. and the absence was felt for years. If you were invested in Hercules and needed to drill concrete or masonry regularly, your options were limited. You either stayed corded or bought into a different battery system just for one tool. Neither option was ideal. A true rotary hammer changes how masonry work feels. Instead of forcing a drill to hammer its way forward through vibration, the internal hammering mechanism actually fractures the concrete while the bit rotates. That difference shows up immediately. Holes drill straighter, faster, and with far less effort. It's the kind of tool that makes you realize how much energy you were wasting before. The brushless motor is especially important on a tool like this. Rotary hammers generate sustained heat and load, and brushed motors tend to fade under that stress. Brushless keeps impact energy more consistent from the first hole to the last, which matters when you're drilling anchors or mounting hardware and need predictable results. It also means less heat buildup and better long-term durability. Battery compatibility is where this really becomes practical. Running on the Hercules 20-volt platform means existing users don't have to rethink their setup. Swap in a higher capacity battery, and you get noticeably better runtime and steadier performance. That flexibility lets you scale the tool to the job instead of being locked into one configuration. In everyday use, this tool earns its keep quickly. Installing concrete anchors for shelves, racks, or outdoor equipment becomes routine instead of dreaded. Drilling into block walls, brick, or foundation concrete feels controlled instead of punishing. Light chipping tasks, like removing old tile or cleaning mortar joints, become realistic cordless jobs instead of cord management nightmares. That said, this tool has a clear lane. It's not designed to replace a large, corded demolition hammer for heavy, continuous braking. If you expect to spend hours chiseling concrete nonstop, a bigger corded tool still makes sense. But for the vast majority of homeowner projects and light professional work, this hits the sweet spot between power, portability, and convenience. What makes this release important isn't just the tool itself, but what it represents. It completes the Hercules cordless ecosystem in a meaningful way. Once you have a capable rotary hammer, there are very few common job site tasks you can't handle with a cordless setup. That's why it sits at number 5. It's not a novelty release, it's a foundational tool that changes what people can realistically accomplish without leaving the Hercules system. Coming up at number 4 is the largest and most anticipated release on this list, a generator that pushes Harbor Freight into a very serious power category. 4. 11,500 watts tri-fuel inverter generator. This is the release a lot of people have been watching for, and it's the point where this list shifts from everyday convenience into serious capability. Harbor Freight has offered generators for years, but this one moves them into a different category altogether. The headline feature is tri-fuel capability. Being able to run on gasoline, propane, or natural gas changes how a generator fits into your life. Gasoline gives you maximum output when you need it. Propane offers longer shelf life and cleaner operation. Natural gas, if you have access to it, turns the generator into something you can rely on during extended outages without scrambling for fuel. That flexibility matters most when conditions aren't predictable. Power output is the other big factor. With 11,500 watts available, this isn't just about keeping the fridge cold and the lights on, it's capable of handling multiple large appliances at once. Air conditioning, pumps, refrigeration, or even a full mobile setup like a food truck or job trailer. For a lot of people, this is the point where backup power turns into business continuity. The inverter design matters here too. Inverter generators produce cleaner, more stable electricity than traditional units. That makes them safer for modern electronics and appliances, and usually means quieter operation, which becomes important when a generator is running for hours or days. Usability is clearly part of the design. Electric start, remote start capability, and built-in carbon monoxide monitoring reduce friction and add safety. Starting power in bad weather without fighting a pull cord is a real quality of life improvement, and CO shutoff is especially important for home use. Despite its size, the generator is built to be movable. Large wheels, a solid frame, and a folding handle make it realistic to reposition when you need to store it, deploy it during an outage, or move it between jobs. This isn't a casual purchase, and it does require planning, space, and an understanding of your power needs. But compared to similar tri-fuel inverter generators from premium brands, This model offers capabilities that usually cost significantly more. Quick note before we move on. If this breakdown has been helpful so far, liking the video and subscribing helps the channel keep these reviews coming. That's why this generator lands at number 4. It's not for everyone, but for homeowners preparing for outages or small businesses that need reliable backup power, it's a meaningful step up. Coming up at number 3 is one of the simplest items on this list, and one of the most surprisingly useful. 3. 15-inch black tactical zip ties. This is the kind of item that looks almost laughable on a new tools list, and that's exactly why it deserves more attention. Zip ties aren't exciting, but they're one of the few things that consistently save time, effort, and frustration when something unexpected happens. The difference here isn't the concept, it's the size and durability. At 15 inches long and thicker than standard ties, these move out of the light-duty drawer filler category and into something you can actually rely on. Short zip ties are fine for small wire bundles or quick indoor fixes, but they hit a wall fast. These don't. They give you enough length to wrap around larger objects, awkward shapes, or multiple items at once without improvising. That extra length changes how often you reach for them. Larger wiring looms, extension cords, hoses, and tubing suddenly become easy to manage. In a garage, that means cleaner storage and fewer tripping hazards. In a vehicle, it means being able to secure something properly instead of hoping it holds until you get home. The black nylon construction matters more than it sounds. White zip ties tend to get brittle over time, especially with heat and sun exposure. Black ties generally hold up better outdoors and under the hood, and they don't draw attention to themselves. When you're securing something temporarily but don't want it to look sloppy, that visual discretion actually counts. Where these really shine is in problem-solving moments. A loose exhaust heat shield, a sagging bumper liner, a rattling license plate frame, a toolbox latch that gave up. None of those situations require a permanent repair on the spot, but all of them benefit from something fast and secure. That's where a longer, stronger zip tie turns a potential headache into a non-issue. They also end up being useful in ways people don't plan for. Temporary handles, bundling scrap material, holding doors or panels closed during transport, organizing cables behind desks, or even stabilizing broken plastic until a proper fix can be made. They're not elegant solutions, but they're effective, and effectiveness is what matters in the moment. Because they're cheap and lightweight, there's no downside to keeping them around. Toss a handful in the trunk, a few in a backpack, and a pack in the garage. Unlike specialty tools that wait for the right job, these get used whenever something shifts, loosens, or starts causing noise. That's why this lands at number 3. It's not a headline tool, but it's one of the most reliably useful items you can own. The longer size makes a noticeable difference, and once you start using them, you'll wonder why you ever settled for the short ones. Next up at number 2 is a compact tool that earns its keep through precision and versatility, especially when larger tools are overkill. 2. Bauer corded rotary tool with flex shaft. This is one of those tools that doesn't look impressive until you realize how often it quietly solves problems that nothing else can. Rotary tools live in that in-between space, where a full-size grinder is too aggressive and hand tools are too slow. When you need control more than power, this is what you reach for. The decision to keep this tool corded is actually a strength. For precision work, consistent speed matters more than raw output. Cordless rotary tools tend to fade as the battery drops, and that inconsistency shows up immediately when you're cutting, grinding, or polishing something small. With a corded setup, the speed stays steady from start to finish, which makes delicate work easier and more predictable. The flex shaft is what really changes how this tool feels in use. Instead of holding the motor in your hand, you're holding a slim, pen-like handle while the motor stays off to the side. That reduces fatigue and gives you far better control, especially for longer sessions. Engraving, trimming plastic, cleaning up metal edges, or smoothing small wooden parts all feel more precise when the tool isn't fighting you. Another reason rotary tools end up being used more than expected is versatility. This one handles cutting, grinding, sanding, polishing, drilling small holes, and light shaping. You might buy it for one specific task, then find yourself reaching for it every week to deal with little annoyances. A burr on a metal edge, a plastic tab that doesn't quite fit, or a tight spot no other tool can reach. The accessory selection matters too. A rotary tool is only as useful as the bits you have on hand, and having a wide range available from the start means you're not stopping mid-job to hunt for extras. For most common tasks, everything you need is already there, which lowers the barrier to actually using the tool instead of putting the job off. It's also worth setting expectations. This isn't meant to replace a die grinder, an angle grinder, or heavy cutting tools. Push it too hard and you'll be disappointed. But used the way it's intended, light pressure, steady hands, detailed work, it performs exactly the way a rotary tool should. That's why it lands at number 2. It's not flashy, and it doesn't dominate a workspace, but it's one of those tools that earns its place by being useful far more often than you expect. And coming up at number 1 is the tool on this list that surprises the most people once they actually need it. 1. Maddox Hot Stapler Plastic Repair Tool. This is the tool that most people don't realize they need until the exact moment something cracks. And once that happens, it immediately makes sense why it earns the top spot. Plastic failures are everywhere now. Automotive trim, bumpers, storage bins, tool housings, appliance covers, lawn equipment, outdoor furniture. Most of these parts don't fail catastrophically. They crack. And once a crack starts, it almost always spreads. At that point, the usual options are either living with it, replacing the entire part, or trying a quick fix that doesn't really hold. The hot stapler changes that equation. Instead of melting plastic together and hoping it sticks, this tool reinforces the damaged area internally. A small metal staple is heated, pressed across the crack, and embedded into the plastic. Once it cools, the staple acts like a skeleton inside the part, locking the crack in place and stopping it from spreading further. The strength comes from the reinforcement, not just fused plastic. That difference matters. Melting plastic with a soldering iron often warps the surface, weakens the surrounding material, and still leaves you with a repair that can reopen under stress. The hot stapler concentrates the heat on the staple itself, which means the surrounding plastic stays more stable. After the repair, excess staple material can be trimmed, the surface lightly sanded, and the area left functional, or even made presentable if appearance matters. Cordless operation is another reason this version stands out. Being USB rechargeable means it's easy to grab and use wherever the problem happens. You're not dragging extension cords around the garage or working awkwardly just to reach an outlet. That convenience makes the difference between fixing something immediately and putting it off until the damage gets worse. Where this tool really proves its value is in money saved. Replacing cracked plastic parts adds up fast, especially in automotive applications, where a small trim piece can cost far more than it should. With a hot stapler, many of those parts become repairable instead of disposable. That also makes it useful well beyond the garage. Storage totes, laundry baskets, toolboxes, and outdoor gear all benefit from the same type of reinforcement. It's not a cosmetic miracle tool, and that's important to understand. This is about function first. If you need a flawless appearance, additional finishing work is still required. It's also not meant for thin, brittle plastics that don't respond well to heat. Used within its lane, though, the repairs are strong, durable, and often last longer than expected. What pushes this to number 1 isn't how flashy it is, but how practical it becomes over time. Once you own it, you start seeing cracked plastic differently. Instead of, "that's broken," the thought becomes, "that's fixable." That mindset shift alone changes how often you replace things unnecessarily. That's why the Maddox Hot Stapler earns the top spot. It solves a real common problem, it saves money, and it turns minor damage into something manageable instead of disposable. Those are the 7 new Harbor Freight tools for 2026. Counted down from the most basic to the one that delivers the most real-world value. At this point, you should have a clear sense of which ones actually fit how you work, and which ones you can skip without missing anything. If this review was helpful, hit like and subscribe. It helps the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.